Hello, my friends. We are back again. It has been too long since we have been at this time slot. This is my favorite time slot. This is the RBN evening show. We already had a lot of great content that came your way today. Me and CJ had a great show. Savvy was just live. This is my time slot. I love bringing on a lot of great left voices on to talk about uh, foreign policy, the class war, state violence, real hard hitting issues. And I've been following the work of Esha for quite some time. You're the host of Historically podcast as well. And she also joined us when we had the anti-imperialist summit a few weeks ago. So I knew we was going to bring her back. Glad to have you back.
Glad to
Isha,
be back.
yeah, tell us about your show before we get started.
Oh,
Historically,
historically, where I started it because I, it's kind of like history is even like written by the winner, the so-called winners, or actually by the more powerful. And if you're just like passively absorbing history, you're only going to get the one side, and that is not going to empower the many. That is going to empower the czars and then the Queen Elizabeths or whatever. So I wanted to get a decolonial history, as in not what the British Museum thinks, but what we, the colonized people, especially the colonized people, like, I mean, I think of, do you prefer Black American or African American? I don't know which one's.
I'm fine. I'm down. I'm down for whatever.
Okay.
I'm down for whatever.
Generally speaking, Black Americans are what you call a colony within a nation, as in you get treated like you're a colony. You don't get the same rights to vote, same, and so it is a different kind of colonialism. So, and then when you check out the whole story, and you and I are both proletarians, and our hearts are going to tug towards the proletarians, so you'll kind of realize that there is a different side to it, and that's kind of why I started historically. And I've learned so much. I've had wonderful guests. So one, let me try to think. One of my favorite episodes was with this anthropologist named Christopher Knight, who gives us the history of humanity, and he talks about how African women were the ones who invented basically singing, cooking, which are very,
You guys talk about
very
a lot of history. You guys talk
what?
about a lot of history on your show, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, like that's the key to decolonize your mind. Like
Yes.
that would help me break away from mainstream establishment groupthink. Because I learned that they were lying to us about history, I knew they were
They lie
lying
to
about.
you about everything. What I mean, well, okay, let's clarify. They don't quite lie to you, but they tell you everything from the point of view of the CEO of the East India Company. Like it's like imagine you're like the head of this like company that's main goal is to colonize India and extract profits, and you're the head of that. Like you're the Jeff Bezos of that. That person has a demented mind. They tell you history from his demented mind.
They even get very recent history purposely wrong. Like, and I want to see if you
by
agree. I want to see
by
if you
they,
agree. Go ahead.
who do you mean by they? As in history books or U.S. media?
The people that teach us, the
Okay,
people I
everyone.
get information from, like I had to relearn all this shit.
Okay,
No, I would say if I was use the term they, I would say the people who are like the main people who pushing the information out.
okay. The corporate media.
Yeah, yeah. So like as example, I want to see how much you agree with this because I've been trying to relearn like the Cold War and how they frame that. Like I remember when I learned of the Cold War, like I thought it was like you had two sides battling against each other,
You
and
did.
you had the evil communists fighting against the capitalists. But the way I interpret it now is, I think it was just a giant class war where.
Yeah, of course it is. Well, okay. So, but this is the context. Right after World War II, a lot of like when you use so much resource, like whatever crap resources Britain had, like they could not continue with the colonization. So it was like a lot of it has to do with decolonization and US and Britain being the primary force against decolonization and against people's liberation. So, but it is a class war because as we can, well, we know how. capitalism trickles down, right? The way it trickles down into colonies is you get child slaves mining for cobalt.
Yep. Yep.
So
And
yeah.
that was the, and I know you talk about Marxism a lot as well, Leninism. That was like the original critique that Marx had, was calling out the slavery system that the West was built on. And
Oh yes.
when you had the Cold War, that was the Western powers and the capitalist class pretty much fighting against the colonized people and the wage slaves and the
Yes.
chattel slaves.
And
It
actual
really
slaves
was.
too. I mean,
What is
and
it?
actual slaves too.
Yeah, yeah. So that's why I don't even like phrasing that as a war. Like
It's a war.
everything. Well, it's more of like an assault on the workers. That's why I like that.
Oh, no, no. Okay, it's a war on the illiterate. I say that the Cold War has been a 100-year war on the illiterate peasant.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, yeah, it's like you. Oh my
That's a good
God,
way to frame it. That's a good way to frame it.
yeah. Oh my God, you in India, like you've been fighting some guy who can't read with flip flops in Indonesia. Good job. Like, there's like nothing to brag about.
Yeah, that
Okay.
was.
By the way, I don't look at the comments because I can't.
It's
My
all
my
good.
head distracts. I just wanted to let people know that the reason I don't look at comments is I can't help myself when I look at comments. So I at the end I'll read them. Okay.
Yeah, it's all good. If you guys want us to answer any questions, you guys can leave some super chats.
Oh, okay. That's a smart idea.
And I'll make sure that like we got a pretty good community, so I see any great comments. I haven't had a chance to read. We get too many comments. So if you guys want us to read, make sure you guys leave a super chat, and I will definitely read them, and we can get into some questions as well. But yeah, that Cold War mentality like convinced people to, like, Americans to fight and die to kill villagers in Vietnam. Like,
Okay, but now it's gonna be even worse. Are you gonna fight and die over an inch of Latvia?
for the expansion of NATO.
For an inch of Latvia? Yeesh, even Latvians are not gonna do that. No one is going to should be doing that. And
And
Joe Biden literally said that. Like he was willing to go to World War III over an inch of Latvia.
yes, and they want, and
And
Biden, our leaders, they're like, your life is a sacrifice I'm willing to make.
uh,
I'm willing to make
for
that.
an inch of Latvia.
But you have villagers in Vietnam that will leave posters up, and they will write
Oh yeah.
cards to soldiers like, guys, we are just villagers. We are doing nothing to
Oh
you.
no, no. But the ones they wrote in Korea is awesome. They are like, look, you are here in Korea in cold.
I wish
Who
I did.
knows who's keeping your wife warm? No, that's a literal poster. I have it somewhere. I can send it to you, and you can tweet it out. But those were like the Korean
Yeah,
posts.
I seen it. I wish I had the receipt ready so we
No,
could.
no, I have it in my cloud, but I can't get it out right.
Yes,
But
okay.
like the
Maybe I can find it. Maybe I can find
yeah,
it.
yeah, it was in Korea. It was awesome. But yeah, for me, yeah. So, but yes, but unfortunately, this is Lenin recognized this problem. Though it's always been the white people that have been the problem. For like the idea, that capitalism could have been ended when the Bolshevik Revolution happened, but the white people or the Western Europeans did not turn their guns on their leaders like the agreement was supposed to be. And then capitalism continued. So it's always the white people that are the problem, unfortunately. White proletariat.
Hey, we've been calling out the people that have been uh holding back working class movements, and that's all I'm gonna say on that. Before I see a lot of people in the chat mention this as well, and I know we was talking about this a little bit before the stream because I saw you was on Katie's show,
Yes, I was.
and I saw maybe about 5 minutes of it. I didn't see the whole. I didn't see a lot of the
Oh,
conversation, and now I kind of regret that I haven't. I didn't see it.
it was interesting because I've never been called. I swear somebody called. Okay, somebody called me a Kremlin puppet. I swear it was fast. I was like, no, 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 or spouting Kremlin points or something about the Kremlin. I was like,
What?
yeah,
Why she say that? Like why
я
would they say that?
надеюсь, что Путин мне дает деньги.
So lay out the background so people know what we're
Okay,
talking about. So you was
so
on Katie Harper's show, and what happened?
there was another guest. Let's not mention her name. I don't know if I bodied her, but what happened is that so first we were asked about our opinion on Yemen and why Joe Biden went to fist bump with MBS. Um, and the reason is clear. Okay, so in February, Joe Biden basically tried to call up MBS and be like, "Yo, MBS, you need to pump up your oil production because that's your traditional role, and yeah, because we want like these sanctions on Russia to work." But MBS, Mohammed bin Salman, MBS is just easier to say, kind of didn't give him the proverbial middle finger, didn't even pick up his call. So at that point, it's like before the Saudis were like the spigot where the US would be like, pump, and then they pump oil. And then, so the way the US government frames it is that they helped stabilize the oil prices, but now they won't do that. So then we went on to talk about the war in Yemen. And I basically said the reason why the Saudis are coming to the negotiating table is because last year in 20 oh no, this was a few years in 2019, starting from 2019, basically a Houthi drone hit some oil drilling plate, not whatever oil, whatever you call place where you dig the oil,
Yeah.
and it actually cut down Saudi production by 50%. So they have been having drones that hit places where it hurts the Saudis. And then she just like went the minute I did not make a moral judgment. I just said this was the logistical case. She suddenly went and so she's like, all militias are bad and people in Yemen are tired of war, blah 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 blah. And then so when she said that, I had to say that there's a difference between, I mean, I don't, you can call me a sectarian, I don't care, but there's a huge difference between the Shia militias and the Salafi terrorists. Like there's a huge difference between Hezbollah and ISIS, in that Hezbollah in Lebanon has been protecting gay bars, ISIS has been crucifying Christians. And then so she said that the biggest problem is Islamism in the Middle East.
Yeah, I was just. This is the.
I
I'm not
can't
gonna.
hear a
I'm
word.
not gonna. I'm not gonna play it. I have the audio off for a reason, but I think this is the interview that we're talking about. Just so you guys know what we did just happen, and
Yeah, it just happened.
that's why me and Isha was talking about it before we went live, and I saw even before we got to that part, Awen, who saw the live stream, was like Isha bodied her. That's just our community.
Thank
That's
you.
their opinion. I just pulled 3 comments. A lot of people think Isha did well. I haven't seen it yet. And I would love to know what part got animated, but this is the interview. I'm not gonna play that much of it, but this is the conversation we're talking about, right, Isha?
Can we
So
can
at
download
what
this
point did she
before it
call
goes
you a
offline?
pimp?
Please do it. If you can download it, please download it before it goes offline. I didn't know.
Why did she call you a pudding puppet though?
Okay, so then later at the end, Katie asked what would I do if I were Biden, and I said I would stop sending like weapons to Ukraine. So she said that, "Oh, no, you can't do that. We have to send weapons to Ukraine." So
What?
then, hold on. I then, in great detail, mentioned the formation of these battalions called the Dobrobats. It's supposed to be which is funded by this billionaire. So if a billionaire is funding a private militia of fascists, they do horrific things because the people. Okay, so if you can't get the Ukrainian military to fight a war, like Ukraine has had a lot of desertations. No. What do you call it when people leave the military? Just turn around and check
Yeah,
out.
deserting?
Deserting, yeah.
Yeah,
I kept on calling it desertation, and I'm like, no, that's not the wrong
yeah.
word. Yeah. So in like 2015, they had to pass a law in Ukraine where it was legal to shoot deserters. So Ukraine cannot get Ukrainians to fight this bloody war because they're not fighting they're not shooting. They're not going to be fighting a war for Hunter Biden's profits. I'm sorry. So then they had to get these irregular Nazi fascist militias. Well, these fascists, okay, so basically, Ukraine, if the US had not interfered in 20, well, there was a coup with Maidan where the U.S. just overthrew the legitimately elected president Yanukovych, and then yeah. So Maidan is a square. What they did was Victoria Newland
Spell that
said
right,
that.
right? Maidan coup.
Yeah,
I think.
yeah,
Yeah.
perfect. So Victoria Newland basically said that in order for the U.S. to like support overthrowing Yanukovych, they needed to see 100 dead bodies on camera. And these like the right sector, which is totally explains how Nazi they are. What they did is they set up cameras and they would like lure them like lambs to these spots where these innocent people were just going to be slaughtered, and they did get 100 bodies on film. And then the U.S. did what it said, and it said that Yanukovych had to go. And then the right sector or the Pravi sector had a militia which set fire to his party office. There's a lot of violence. So then Yanukovych had to flee. And then came the coup government, which, okay, so the day after where these like mass, where the, is this a mass shooting where this mass shooting happened where like 100 people were killed? Um, there was okay, so that on the same day next in a square that's not too far away from Maidan, I can't remember the name, there was an anti-Maidan, as in people who were in support of the current government. They were mostly from the east, and people from Crimea, which is a peninsula, had chartered four, no, 8 buses, and in order to support it. Of course, the Western media ignored it. But when they saw this like unbelievable violence in Maidan Square, they immediately were scared. They knew what they had to do. And so they immediately got on the bus and tried to go back home. But unfortunately, the right sector caught up with about 3 of the buses. One bus they set on fire completely, killed everyone. The other bus they somehow managed to stop, and they beat up a lot of people. They made these are like Russians, and they made them say Slava Ukraina, and 27 million Soviet citizens died in World War II. So Nazis are not very it's very disrespectful to them, to their grandparents. Like it's like making you say Heil Hitler, which is very disgusting. um, and so when only 4 buses came back to Crimea, what happened is that they had a really huge town hall, where they're like, okay, we're not going to. They did not. First of all, they did not know what was going on. There are these psychos who are murdering everyone. They murdered, like, we sent 8 buses, not all 8 came back, and one was burnt, killing everyone inside. So like the people in Sevastopol had a very big town hall, like in like a big football field or something, and and the Ukrainian navy that was in Crimea also did not know what was going on. So the Ukrainian navy decided to like blockade Crimea from the rest of Ukraine, and then they had the referendum in order to join Russia. And the choice is psycho Nazis or not psycho Nazis. And that's an easy choice. So people in America say that the referendum is illegitimate. But if you look at it from their eyes, there's a great video which I'll send Nick, and Nick will tweet it out. How about that?
Yeah, yeah. You can put it in the private chat. You can send it to me.
I can't do it. I have ADHD, so there's no way I can find the video while still talking.
What video you talking about? No,
The video of that talks about the whole Crimean referendum, that is, I have somewhere that I'll send it to you that you can tweet out.
yeah, we can do that. That's fine. That's
Okay.
fine.
So so then yeah, Crimea joined, but then when I mean Crimea left Ukraine, and then of course the Russian navy joined in blockading that area, so no Ukrainian troops could get in. But then, like when they saw that Crimea did that, what happened is that so in Ukraine, they don't have states. Each area, like the political division is oblast, I guess. So an oblast is like Ohio would be an oblast in America, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there are And then there's a river in Ukraine called the Dnieper River. So west of the Dnieper River used to belong to us, parts of it, Austria Hungary. East of the Dnieper always belonged to Russia, like the Tsar of Russia. Sometimes the west was like kind of spotty where it would come and go. Um, so, anyways, the oblasts in the east of the Dnieper River, like especially Lugansk and Donetsk, decided to have a referendum. But then the Ukrainian government, by this time, they had this like fake guy. I can't remember his name. I'll just call him the Ukrainian Guaido. It was not Poroshenko. The
The
Ukrainian Guaido.
glider.
Yeah, he's like Guaido, self-declared. He basically decided to do this anti-terrorist operation. At this point, Ukraine, like I can give you at least like four instances of the Ukrainian military just going to Donetsk, literally handing them, the militia people, the weapons and saying, "No, we're not fighting. No." So there's no Putin involvement here. And also the people who live here are Cossacks and they've been fighting since Genghis Khan, like forever. So what they've been doing is what you call partisan warfare, which is exactly what they did in World War II. And so like to somebody who is not very observant, it looks like somebody comes in, fights, and goes. Like, and so that's where the U.S. government started the little green men rumor with like Russians, but it's literally partisan warfare. And so Donetsk and Lugansk, both of them declared independence, and they have been for the past 8 years. That's been the civil war, which is Ukraine's Kiev's government saying no,
That
no,
the
no,
West pretends they pretends it never happened. They pretend that this conflict started when Russia invaded Ukraine, and they purpose and it's like a coordinated effort where they say unprovoked Russia unprovoked aggression, and
no,
then,
no,
and
no.
they pretend they
They've had
stand with
they've had a civil war for 8 years,
yeah, and people and
and
for some
and
reason, for some reason people pretend that's not the case. People pretend
well, because they don't want to face who both of the sides have been. One side is people fighting for their lives. And the other side is a I'm not gonna like it's been very cruel to the people of Lugansk and Donetsk. For example, today I watched like I watched this video where this lady I haven't the reason why I can't share this video is I haven't subtitled it. It's in Russian. This reminded me so much of Flint, where this lady talks about how this like nonprofit organization like they didn't have they had water cut off. This is in the city near, it's called Lysychansk. They had like the Ukrainian government had cut off water as a way to like punish these people. And then she talked about how this humanitarian organization came, and then they gave them like just a little bit of bottled water, and she was like, "How am I going to give my kids just this? Like they're thirsty. We need the water spigots to like flow with clean water." And I've seen that exact same clip in Flint too. It's so creepy, but I'll show you. Like I can't, but so it's been a very cruel war. Knowing I've been doing a lot of research on these special battalions, I've been interviewing people who've been kidnapped by them, and knowing what I know, now I'm mad at Russia for not intervening 8 years earlier, but they did try every diplomatic solution. So the first thing is that the Ukrainian government, the post Maidan, the coup government, I'm just going to call them the coup government if it's after Maidan. Um, so tried this anti-terrorist operation, which is similar to the U.S. war on terror. It didn't work. They got really handed it to him, and so they had to. In August of 2014, they came to an accord with called the Minsk Accords with the people that they call the separatists. Or separatists are people who want to be their own country. Well, what happened was that the Ukrainian government, with the help of the U.S. government, of course, by just weapons and infinite, like you know what I mean, ignored that. Like 2 years later, again, there was a second Minsk Accord. And again, both like the Ukrainian government had to assure that these Nazi but Dobrobrats, as in like Azov, Aidar, Tornado, Shakhtarsk, Dnipro 1, Dnipro 2, Dnipropetrovsk, there's lots of them, 59 of them at least, were completely disarmed and taken away from the Lugansk Donetsk area, misanthropic division. And of course, the Ukrainian government couldn't do it. It's just, and the U.S. government can do it even easier by just not sending them weapons. But they have refused. And so then, I mean, if you're looking at yourself from somebody who lives in Donetsk and who lives in Lugansk, last time, I mean, these Nazis just killed babies with like by hitting them against like whatever they did. You're not like it is the Ukrainian government has to disarm these national dobrobrats or whatever first, and they hadn't done that. And then so then the war continues and continues, and then Russia finally decides, okay, we're gonna talk to the U.S. government. And so finally, they in December of this year, they talked to Blinken. But while they were having these talks, the U.S. government sent in more weapons, and they were caught red-handed. So at that point, like there's nothing to do. And then on top of that, what happened is that 160,000 of these like Azov like troops, the total Nazi troops, are at the border in Russia. And I know many people may or may not believe this, but what happened is when the Soviet Union fell apart, it's not like they made sure, like, there was a lot of ethnic Russians stuck outside of Russia. In Estonia, for example, there are a lot of stateless Russians, as in Russians who are nobody. Like, they don't have a state. The Estonian government doesn't recognize them as people. Basically, they can't get a passport. They're just stuck in Estonia. Like, it's slow genocide. There's like a lack of a Latvia to Lithuania. So I do think that the current Russian government does feel a responsibility for ethnic Russians who are stuck outside of Russia. Like that's why they, when the Kazakhstan, when the U.S. tried to do the coup in Kazakhstan earlier this year, that's why they like immediately came to the rescue. Um, in Donetsk and Lugansk, at least, majority of the people are ethnic Russian. So they follow the Russian patriarch, like the Eastern Russian Orthodox Church. They speak Russian as a language as opposed to Ukrainian as a language, and so they do feel this. And a lot of and most of them have family inside mainland, inside Velik. Okay, if you're gonna use medieval terms, what we now know as Russia, they used to call it Velikaya Russia. What we now know as Lugansk and Donetsk, it used to be Nova Russia, and I guess Ukraine used to be Mala Russia, which means Little
How many
Russia.
languages you speak, Isha?
I don't like that question, so I'm learning Russian
You
because I want
learning
to.
this?
I've been learning for the past about a little over a year and a half now.
That seemed like a very hard language to learn.
Yeah, it is. But I
I,
love it.
I wanna ask you about this because we covered this a little bit earlier, um, where we had a few Republicans that voted against adding Sweden and Finland into NATO. All
Thank
the
God.
Democrats voted, including AOC and the
Yes, I
Squad,
know.
all voted
Thank God.
for that. And um, it to me it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. It seemed like the West trying to escalate even more with Russia.
Okay. Do you
What's your
want
take
to
on that?
die over Finland? No, you don't. So NATO has an Article 5, which means if any one of these countries, quote unquote, is threatened, everyone has to join. So do we want to create, like, seriously, do we want to create World War III? Who wants to die? Who wants, like, there's going to be a lot of blood over. Anyway, Finland was part of Russia historically. So sorry, but I don't think we should. I just don't think NATO should exist. And it originally, after the Warsaw Pact fell apart, NATO should have fallen apart. But they exist because the primary thing that the NATO exists to do is to protect the US puppet government from its people. So whenever they say Russia what they mean is a popular Russia is not really Russia. Like there is no Russia. Like it's kind of like a boogeyman that they can always blame. It's always like that's why like they were like it's always like a popular people's revolution. So they well when they were like in Nicaragua, they were Cuba. Like anytime they see a people's revolution, they somehow blame Russia for it. When what NATO does is literally protect despotic governments from their people. That's why you need the U.S. bases. And like for example, there's the reason why you don't need China doesn't need bases because China is not trying to protect governments from its people. And in order to get like China's government, literally, you need to do is get Lenin's collected work and just translate it into whatever local language and just drop it. And like that's like they having like a collective people's government is the more natural state. So the US literally exists to protect capitalism. Every US base that exists is there to protect capitalism from people. So it is to protect corporations from you. And NATO, okay, it was literally the first chief of, speaking of white supremacy, the first chief of staff of NATO was Adolf Heusinger, who was Hitler's right hand. Literally, there's Hitler's right hand man. He was the Hitler's what was he? Chief of military commander. So you can't get any more white supremacist than Hitler. And like the first chief of staff of NATO was Adolf Heusinger, and he's not the only. Not, I mean, there's Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, every very fascist governments in NATO. So like Latvia is basically like a run like a mafia. No, not Latvia. I'm sorry, Lithuania. I know for a fact because I interviewed this Lithuanian. It'll run like literally like a mafia by one family. It's crazy. So there is no democracy that they're protecting. They're protecting capitalism.
I see they yeah, make sure you guys check out this conversation. I see people still talking about it because it just happened. Today was a debate between that's the person you talked to and Esha on Katie Halper's show. We talked about that a little bit, and that's how we kind of got into explaining about the Ukraine conflict. I'm still confused on how she got upset at you for saying that Biden shouldn't arm Ukraine. Shouldn't
Well,
that
yes,
be a
because
duh?
she is a Democratic bot, I think. I'm not sure. So she doesn't understand. Okay, so she thinks Ukraine needs protection from Putin. Really? I've seen Ukraine needs a protection. Ukrainians need protection from their own government. And I've seen people actually, like for example, the first thing that Russia did was there was a like the Ukrainian government had dammed this river, so they broke this dam and Crimea got water again. Well, and Russia. Okay, so what they do is they try to make Putin. Okay, it's a country of 130 million, and when I mean it's a old country that's been around for at least 1,000 years, um, and things work differently there. So you can't like look at it from the U.S. point of view and just kind of decide that everything's secretly controlled by Putin because it's not. In fact, Putin had to be dragged into this war kicking and screaming because the Duma declared, uh, recognized the republics of Donetsk and Lugansk, and I'm not sure why, but recognizing it forced Russia to go into the war. But Putin himself has said right before that the aim was demilitarization and denazification of Ukraine. I have seen zero evidence that they have deviated from this idea because they've targeted military targets. They have definitely denazified. um, so and
People
they're
keep
going.
pretending, like people keep pretending that Russia has this plan to like take over Europe, and that's why
That
Finland and
sounds
Sweden.
like a little. That's a little. Sounds a little Judeo Bolshevik. That gives me a little like Adolf Hitler vibes there. That's what.
Because they want to paint Putin as like the next Hitler.
But okay, like I said, that it's really racist too. Like, oh my god, these Asian hordes are uh coming here to destroy Western civilization.
Meanwhile, the
If
U.S.
only I'm like, if well, you know what Gandhi would say when somebody asked him about Western civilization. He's like, that would be a great idea for the future.
Meanwhile, the U.S. have 800 military bases. Got involved in countless
God knows.
elections in the last
We
few
can't count.
decades. But they want to pretend that Russia has this plan to take over Europe. The United States have an open strategy called full spectrum dominance, which is all about the United States essentially taking over and controlling
The world.
the world. And
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
go
But
ahead.
the thing is that yes, well, okay, so yeah, like I said, it's like Genghis Khan, and they actually saw this racist article where they compared Putin to Genghis. I'm like, yeah, hordes of Mongols are gonna come in riding in their horses to destroy. What if only? I,
Do
that
people
would have.
know that like Putin's kill count is not even where near
There is. I mean,
Biden's or Obama?
well, I don't even know what a kill count is, but what I do know is that um Russia is going like is okay. The first day of Iraq was shock and awe, where they used like so many bombs. Like I wrote in a whole article about this. Russia has not done that. They've been going foot by foot. Like Russian soldiers are on the ground. That's why they have such a high mortality rate, because they're on the ground at risk, and they have been basically very thorough and going district, not even district, but like really sort of rayon by rayon, which is really small, and just like clearing out the areas of these Nazi battalions. And you can see that they've kind of did like a if you look at live UA maps, you'll see that they kind of did like a C shape, exactly their same thing they did in Syria. And and they're not really draining any resources from Ukraine. In fact, they're in Mariupol. The Ukrainian government had shut down the steel factory, the Azovstal. Russia is building it back, and it's going to be giving people employment by 2023. No matter how much you wish it were that Russia was an equal evil or whatever, like, I'm sorry, but that's just not what
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
doing.
If we going to be honest, if we're gonna call it balls and strikes, we had to call it balls and strikes. And that's 100% accurate. I want to
Are people
switch to
still
this.
talking of? Okay, okay, okay.
I want
So,
what was that?
okay. Oh, people are still. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to create quite a. Yeah. Okay, go
No,
ahead.
it's okay. No, it's okay. It's okay. I want to ask you about this because I saw this headline today, and I want to get your reaction to it because liberals keep pretending that they are somehow fighting for democracy and the sovereignty of Ukraine. Meanwhile,
Ukraine has not been sovereign since 2014. Stop pretending otherwise. So shut up until. Okay, if you.
Zelensky and I feel like we're not going to really
Wait, wait.
know about what really happened in Ukraine until we start uh, piecing the pieces together one by one. Because
Hold
what we
on.
see in the media is not true. They've been lying to us about everything. Now you got Zelensky and you got the Ukrainian officials that essentially purging anyone who disagrees with Zelensky. Is this
Well,
the,
not quite disagreeing with him. Okay, so what we have to understand that Zelensky is not is okay. So like the head of the Azov battalion basically said, "We don't need you. You're alive because we are like letting you be alive." Okay, so okay, okay, I'm gonna be mean, but that prosecutor, she totally made up random crap about like, okay, that was actually, I will agree with him. She should have been sacked because she just like made up random crap about like Russians raping people, but they didn't.
yeah, that was that same person. Y'all covered that. The
Okay,
person they were mad
so
she was caught lying. But
okay,
it wasn't just her. It was hundreds of officials, including their security chief as well.
yeah, yeah, okay.
They purging a ton of people.
SBU, I've interviewed. Okay, I've interviewed the SBU. SBU is like their FBI, I guess. Um. Oh, okay. Okay. Oh, this Joker. Okay. Sorry. I've been watching a lot of Zelensky is a good comedian, by the way. He's a very good comedian. I've been trying to like, long story, but why did he get? What was the reason he got sacked?
they claim, and then once again, you have something that comes from the Ukrainian officials, and then there's obvious common sense, right?
Oh,
They
okay,
they
what did the
claim
Ukrainians say?
that they claim that they was showing poor leadership qualities, and they was sympathetic to Russia.
Okay, poor
No, this
leadership.
is what
Oh,
this is. I'll read this tweet just so you have a little more content. And I'll pass it to you. CIA is running the show these days in Ukraine. Zelensky is firing his close friend, security chief, and 651 people for state treason. State tre- What is that? What does that mean? So if you're a public official in Ukraine and you advocate for peace, just for example, we don't know what the real reason is. But for example, if you're a Ukrainian official and you advocate for peace, that goes exactly against what Zelensky is doing, who wants to drag this out because he's a puppet of the West, right? So it seems like anyone who speaks out against the insanity of the West or questions Zelensky or the direction from NATO or the West, it seems like they were being purged the same way they banned socialist communist parties, and
oh,
essentially they kept all the.
even like Victor Medvedchuk's. Oh my god, that was so cruel. Like it was like a centrist party. Yeah, they've been purging. They've been making everything illegal. But yeah, okay. So, uh, yeah. Um, state treason is just it's just completely insane stuff. Like, often it's like not. There's no reason, and
And liberals are saying right now, they're saying, well, because the left is
Ivan.
actively calling them
I'm trying
out.
to remember where I remember him from. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Tell me.
Yeah, we the left, we are calling them out because we're principled, right? And the liberals are
Liberals are
pretending.
not part of the left, but
Yeah,
let's
no, I
see.
said we are. The liberals are pretending that the Ukrainians are being principled. The only reason they're banning opposition parties is because they're in war. Oh, they're in war, so Zelensky's allowed to ban any opposition to their unhinged strategy of allowing Ukrainians to die. I've seen liberals apologize for
There.
them banning leftist parties while keeping fascist parties in place.
I mean, but what we have to remember is it's kind of like in Ukraine, it's kind of like Frankenstein and his monster. And Putin is not wrong when he said it is a nation held hostage by a bunch of fascists and drug addicts because there are a lot of these right wing battalions where everyone, like the parliament, says we need to get rid of them, but then it's like no one in Ukraine is capable of getting them to disarm. You see what I mean?
Right.
So it is so some of it is just the hostage situation that where you can't disarm the right wing battalion, so you kind of do whatever, you capitulate. But then some of it is the West running the show. And yeah, I mean, but yeah, Zelensky. I wrote an article about 2 months ago where we were talking about how basically the CIA was training the SBU, which is the Ukrainian version of the FBI, to just kill quote unquote traitors. And yeah, so yeah, so Zelensky, and there is, so first of all, Ukraine has no democracy, it has no sovereignty. Um, why are I am still confused uh, about why like they have not like given up on this like why they have not sacrificed Ukraine yet. Like, do you have any ideas?
I, I I have theories on, like, once again, we really don't know the true reason why
Hunter Biden.
Zelensky are purging these people, because you just have the statement that the Ukrainian officials are making. I think you got a
Hunter
lot of these
Biden.
people, even on the Ukrainian inside, is like, guys, we got to end this. We need to seek peace.
Oh yeah,
This is we need the West is literally sacrificing us for the. And then whenever someone says that, Zelensky get the call because, like you said, and we all agree, Zelensky is a puppet of the West. He's a puppet of Azov. Whenever one of his officials, even his close friend,
yeah.
deviates, they will banish them, and that's the quote unquote liberal world order that the Democrats claim they are fighting for.
I'm also very curious about what Hunter Biden has been investing in Ukraine. Like, sometimes I wonder if like that is a driving force because it's just crazy. Okay, so they keep sending weapons. Weapons keep getting destroyed. The Ukrainian army, like, okay, the thing about U.S. military weapons is that it's not like an iPhone where you can just like pick it up and go boom, boom, boom. You have to train people for like years sometimes on how to operate it together. It's like a big logistical operation. Like you can't like sending weapons just is not that simple. Like if you send like bunch of like missiles, you have to like send the up figuring like you have to train these people to operate. You have to run drills on how to do it together and how to not like there are thousands and thousands of things that you have to keep in mind. So you can't just like send weapons and hope for success. And it seems like that's somehow all the heads of NATO had not thought this whole war through. Like
Yeah,
they did not think, oh, like it was just not well thought of. Like there was like this like magic mystery that none of, and I'm like, how did it miss so many people's imagination that of just like the logistics? What happens in the first day when Russia just blows up all your Air Force swept toys? Boom. That happened within the first 30 minutes. And you can like how are you going to send it? Where, like from where, who, what, train, plane, I don't know, but they keep sending it to somewhere, and I don't know if it's
this is the debate I always have with myself, and I kind of want to get your take on this. Like, did they tank the economy on purpose, or did they really miscalculate this bad?
they
Because
really miscal okay,
because
okay,
I can see the argument for both ways. Like, do they not give a fuck if their sanctions
both.
against the Russians was gonna fail, or if they like I don't care either way. What anyway? What's your take, Isha? Do you want to take
Okay,
it?
obviously they don't care because they're so isolated, but I really think they miscalculated but because actually Sergei Lavrov has been thinking about this like for years now. So this is like a he's a very patient man. He's a Russian foreign minister, so he's like Anthony Blinken's counterpart in Russia.
Yeah,
So his strategy has been very good. What they overestimated they overestimated uh, Europe's role in the Russian economy, of course. And what they underestimated is China and India's capacity, like a bit like China and India are like give, give, give to all the Russian gas and oil. So it has not hurt the Russian economy because, I mean, if you look at the population, there are 6 billion people over there and not even maybe a billion in Europe. And so, and unfortunately, Germany, on the other hand, like had an industrial base which is based on large Russian imports. So Germany's get totally like going back to like apparently they have to heat it in wood stoves and they're going back to the 1930s, which makes me nervous. um,
they in the West it was trying to pressure India because they were getting mad at India for they were like we're not gonna sacrifice our people over your fucking
oh,
hypocrisy because they was making the moral argument. It was like God, we know you need Russian oil and gas, but think about Russia invaded Ukraine. We gotta hold them accountable. Like how
okay,
many people
Britain
you killed?
invaded India for like the Queen. Fuck. Like my thing is, well, yeah, exactly. And that's been most of the world's attitude. South, they're not getting any support from like. Okay, so they underestimated the third world, I guess. They've had an old fashioned thinking where they thought the third world was like the 1950s, but and then they have not realized that like Bolivia makes its own electric cars. I mean, that was kind of why they like after Bolivia began the first electric car production. That's when they coup de Evo Morales. So and then there is a lot of different minerals in Africa and just just it's not 1950 is what I think. But then ultimately, they do not care because to be this careless about the U.S. economy, to be like they've to be such a big blunderer. Obviously, you don't think too deeply about your people. Is what I
Yeah,
say.
I think they already adjusting for the new era of serfdom. When you look at income inequality, what the people who have and have nots, it's about as bad as it was during the height of the era of serfdom. Now we get into like what I would like to call the new era, where we have serfdom with new technology. Right, we surf with an iPhone.
Have you seen Sorry to Bother You?
Maybe I'm bad with references.
It's a movie.
Maybe not.
Okay, you have not seen it.
Maybe not.
Okay, we should watch it. It's hilarious, but they kind of do that like at the end. Okay.
Yeah, I definitely gotta check it out. Definitely gotta check it out.
Okay. But yeah. Okay. So, okay. There's a lot of fellow Lavrov fans in your chat. Awesome. Okay.
Yeah,
I love
I
Lavrov.
saw that.
Lavrov has the really dark sense of humor too. He's really funny. I love him. Um.
I knew you like that. Well, go ahead.
Okay. Saw a report of a Ukrainian plane crash filled with arms and a white chemical that numbered. Oh, maybe. I mean, a lot of there was a lot of weirdness going on there. Is what
Yeah, people
uh
start to watch it. Sorry, guys, I'm horrible with movies.
no, 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 it's okay.
I'm becoming an old man too. I'm like, fucking these people,
This
these
is an
kids
old
with
movie. It's
movie
like 4 or 5 years old. Sorry to bother you.
Yeah, I gotta check it out. I see some people saying yeah, I know
It's
I'm
very
boomer minded in a lot of
it's
ways.
very funny. But they kind of do mention like this like modern idea of like recreating, yeah, reinventing serfdom. But um, well, yes and no. In that,
I gotta write about that one day. Can I really do? Because like people, like there's theories that I see a lot of capitalists push with, which I'm not saying they're necessarily wrong, like the Great
there
Reset
are,
theory, but the Great Reset is like as Marxists, we understand that capitalists come together and control world resources, and they decide
yeah.
that's what they do. Like, how's that? I don't think that's new.
No, no,
So
no. They no. There was a conference, like at the world at Davos, where some dude mentioned the Great Reset, but it's the more concerning thing is the conference at Davos.
yeah,
The
exactly.
World Economic Forum, that's a conference in Davos.
They they planning this era where we don't own anything, where BlackRock and all these capitalists gonna own all the land, jack up the rents.
Well, I mean, Bill Gates already owns a lot of the land. Monsanto a lot. So,
Yep. And but remember they fearmonger about Russian oligarchs all the time. They want to pretend that Russian oligarchs have this insane amount of power. And I'm not saying they don't. 'Cause I'm not here to.
no.
I'm just saying that
Okay, how come there are Russian oligarchs that get arrested? Why are there Russian oligarchs who are afraid to go back to Russia?
they
How
get
many
arrested. So like,
American billionaires ever get arrested and are afraid to come to America? Zero.
that's a great point. That's a, imagine like just thinking about someone like Elon Musk and Bill Gates being arrested. You guys even just saying that sounds unrealistic,
Yeah.
right? And they're the biggest criminals. They're the biggest thieves, the biggest
Yeah,
way
and
waste
Elon
stuff.
Musk's dad did gross stuff. Like he had a child with his stepdaughter. Ew.
Ugh.
Yeah, sorry.
They all do a lot of weird stuff, especially when you get that much money and you become that rich. They start doing just a lot of weird stuff to get off because they can do whatever they want.
Oh God. Yeah. But this was a new thing I heard. It's like, ew. It's not like, yeah. Okay. Somebody said Germany was going back to these. Some Western globalists want to take Europe out. Want to take? What does want to take Europe out mean? I agree that Germany. Okay, one part that was really funny I thought was parts of Germany self denazifying in that this BASF factory. BASF was like one of the IG Farben enterprises, so they were involved in the Holocaust. So they shouldn't exist, but they do. Like had to stop production because they ran out of gas. Like ran out of whatever butane, whatever they needed from Russia. So it's like self denazifying. But yeah, want to take, yes, there is a conflict between Europe. what people in what the leadership in Western Europe want versus what the leadership in the US wants. Yeah, so there has been, especially with France and Germany, so they've been kind of pushing back against each other because France and Germany don't want like a million Ukrainian refugees on their doorstep. US will never have to worry about that. So there is, I agree, there is a big conflict. And then because of the euro was competing with the dollar for like hegemony. So there is some aspects of people, some investors in the US who want to weaken the euro, and no one in Europe wants to weaken the euro. So I do see that conflict, yes.
I'm interested in your take on this as well, but the term globalist,
It sounds
like
a little anti-Semitic.
like don't y'all mean neoliberal capitalists?
Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah.
when we keep like, do you guys realize that was a term that right wingers use because they don't want to call out capitalism for what it is? So
Oh, yeah.
they invented this whole new thing. They call people someone a globalist.
I thought that was a
That's
job
you.
revolted.
That's you guys are talking about neoliberal
Yeah, yeah,
capitalism,
yeah.
which is essential. And I'm not talking about this. I'm not talking about you because I don't know the person who led the super chat. I'm just talking about in general. I'm not calling you out. Thank you for $5. In general,
Yeah.
a lot of right wingers they call out the globalists, even
But
though they
it's vague
support.
and it can change. Like that's the thing, is that when you with globalists, you can change who it is based on who's paying you. Like if the Koch brothers pay, like, but neoliberal capitalism, that definition is not vague, so it won't change.
Yeah, and that's why the right wingers don't want to say that because it's not vague. When you calling out neoliberal capitalism, you calling out their ideology because
Yep.
Donald Trump is a neoliberal.
And capitalist. Yeah.
Yeah, you have Reaganomic political ideology in this country for as long as I lived. I was born in 91. So my entire life we lived under neoliberal capitalism. So what you guys are calling globalist is neoliberal capitalism. And these are the people that call out the globalists. They are also I see a lot of these same people. Now I'm friends with some of these people. I had a conversation with some of these people. I'm not gonna name drop them. They will say, well, I agree with most of what you say, but I'm not ready to call myself a socialist or communist. I'm like, bro, you calling out the globalists and capitalists. They have the
What's the
ideology
opposite of a communist? Who did the Hitler go after first? First, they came for the communists. So, right?
yeah, and that also another point. I think
And then if you don't call yourself a communist, you can't take credit for, like, you can't. We communists, of course, we defeated the Nazis. We eradicated smallpox. We cured poverty in over like 2 billion people. We eradicated illiteracy. So you can't say we for all the great. Oh, we went to space. So and we used to be a bunch of illiterate peasants, and we did this all by ourselves. But if you're not a communist, you can't be part of we who did all these great things.
This was a fun conversation. I wanted to put a few more.
Well, more than calling yourself a communist, I would recommend CPUSA. I understand there are problems with the, sometimes they get a little old and boomery, but you should join the CPUSA because it's all about learning how to fight. Because when you don't have power, you have to learn how to fight together as a people and as a group, and be creative, because there's no solution. There's not like a math problem where it's like 5 plus 5 equals 10. This is something that no one in the universe has ever faced. Like, how do you overcome apocalyptic capitalism? We don't know. So it is learning how to fight together and how to work together. And for that, you should definitely, you can't do it alone. So I would recommend joining the CPUSA. And that's like the Communist Party that Lenin liked. So that's why I'm gonna. And the thing is that yes, there are problems, but they're not. But they're. But because of democratic, the way you'll once you join, you'll learn the way the CPUSA works. If you have enough participation, you can iron out a lot of problems. Unlike the Democratic Party, which is just vague and opaque, and God knows who's in charge.
Well, say it doesn't make more. It makes more sense to try to fix a party that at least have your same ideology instead of trying to join a party that are literally capitalist and imperialist, and then you're going to change that, right? So
well,
Isha,
okay, I always tell people this, like if you in 1996 you decided to join the Taliban in order to move them left. Let's say there are two brothers, Mario and Luigi. In 1996, Mario decided to join the Democratic Party to try to move them left, and Luigi joined the Taliban to move them left. Come 2022, guess who's been more successful? So you have an easier time moving the Taliban left than the Democratic Party.
Isha, I want to give you a last chance to share anything else you want to say, and also promote your podcast and Substack as well.
Okay,
You know,
well, the first thing I want to say is that um, within the US, if you're like just used to American procedures, American things, like you're not going to be thinking that, like, you're not even taught how to properly look at the world and understand the problems, and you can't fix what you don't understand. So that's why you need liberal leftist theory is really about learning how the world works. And that's why I started a show called Late Nights with Lenin. And nowadays it's going to be on Wednesday night at 9 p.m. And basically, you're learning how to think so you can at least analyze the world as it is and not as they want it or as you want it, because you have to first start at ground zero, which is understanding what's wrong, because you can't fix what you if you don't know what's wrong, how are you going to fix it?
exactly. Well said, Isha. And I hope you guys enjoyed this show. We upload every single day. We're gonna have more content
I'm
coming
so
your
happy,
ways.
like it's amazing. I've been liking a lot of it. It's like very, you're so different than like there are so many different things, like it's a lot, and I'm loving it.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it, Isha. That means a lot. That means a lot. So
And
that's
I'm really glad that you guys like decided, like there's two things like I'm really proud of is that you guys were first thinking about general strike, but then you're like, wait a minute, how are we going to do that logistically? And you hosted a general strike conference where you thought about these things, and maybe it's not going to be figured out within 6 months or 8 months, but it's like you took a step back to kind of understand and tell people about the logistics. And also the biggest threat is to the world is imperialism, especially
yeah.
us. And I'm so glad you guys decided to host the anti-imperialist conference, because it's hard, like inside the US, what I say is that when you're inside the belly of the beast, you don't know how beastly the beast is.
Well, so that's exactly why we had to do that, and I definitely appreciate the community that we built here. Always
Oh, it's
good to hear
great.
from you as well, and we definitely will have you back on. And I appreciate you guys for watching. If you enjoyed this, please leave a like, share, subscribe. We also got a link to the Patreon and Isha's page in the description as well. If you guys
Yep,
want to show
and I've been working on one article about Ukraine with the gray zone. It's
nice.
about I mentioned it, it's about like the right wing battalion, the mercenary battalions. I'm We have a lot of great episodes upcoming. I am also uh, well, okay. So I'm working on this like a few good historical articles on various topics. So one is about various nations. Like I kind of want to do a quick it's not going to be a deep one, but like a survey of like all these nations and how they got their independence and from whom. So that
Yeah,
one,
that
and
should be
then
dope.
last one. Sorry, and then the last one is I saw this British documentary about Britain's crown jewels, which made my fire go. So I've been kind of working on talking about where each of the crown jewels came from. Like the Star of Africa is not Britain's crown jewel. It came from Africa.
Yeah, make sure you guys show support. And I
Historically.substack.com. Just $5 a month.
Absolutely. Have a good one, guys, and we'll be back tomorrow.
Yep.
Have a good one, guys.
Smrti.